to wear a face mask outside their homes.
Even though it's uncomfortable, we're not used to it. Wearing a mask is going to get our kids back to school sooner and safer.
New York City's school district, the country's largest, will reopen next month.
More than 1 million public school students out since March can return to class September 10th with random temperature checks, masks and distancing required, and a 14-day quarantine for any kid testing positive for COVID-19. The mayor says the city now has one of the lowest infection rates in the nation, assuring concerned parents and teachers every school will have a certified nurse on duty. But unions aren't satisfied. With the United Federation of Teachers writing, the UFT has said repeatedly that we cannot reopen schools unless they are safe for students and staff. We need both safety and sanity in this crisis.
Fox's Rick Leventhal. America is listening to Fox News.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla Dos opened its doors in 2010 and has been proudly serving the people of Guam for 10 amazing years. In celebration of their 10th anniversary, Mezcla Dos will be offering 20% off on all burgers for a limited time only. Terms and conditions apply. Please call them at 646-6295 for more information, or visit them at their Upper Tumon location right across Kmart. Thank you, Guam, for making Mezcla Dos one of your favorite hamburger spots.
Prosecutors in Chicago filing felony warrants against 42 people for last weekend's looting spree. The police superintendent, David Brown, warning against further attempts.
We are going to deploy all tactics necessary to prevent and stop looting.
There had been calls for Prosecutor Kim Foxx's resignation for failing to prosecute people arrested during earlier violent protests. And 2 people are facing charges for setting a New York City police vehicle on fire.
Protesters Corey Smith and Elaine Carberry are facing arson and arson conspiracy charges. They could face up to 20 years behind bars. Investigators say the pair were caught on surveillance video setting fire to a police homeless outreach van in the early morning hours on July 15th. Smith and Carberry were tracked down in Brooklyn after an informant identified them. Amid ongoing protests, several police vehicles have been torched in several major cities during the unrest following the death of George Floyd. Tom Graham, Fox News.
U.S. intelligence agency is exposing a Russian hacking tool they compare to a digital Swiss Army knife.
The National Security Agency and FBI are providing a rare glimpse behind the cyber curtain, putting a Russian hacking tool on full display. The tool is codenamed DrovoRub, and they say it's got the potential to cause widespread havoc across U.S. systems. Russia's notorious GRU, the government's intelligence hub, designed the tool in order to break directly into defense and national security systems. But cyber sources fear it could be deployed even more widely and may have already been used in the run-up to 2020. Democrat lawmakers say interference is already well underway. But President Trump's national security team insists they're doubling down on efforts to defend against attacks.
Fox's Jillian Turner, and I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
$5 foot long, piled high with veggies.
They're back. Any footlong is a $5 footlong when you buy one at regular price at participating locations. Subway. Eat fresh.
Hafa Dave, this is Carl from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future. Whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community, our dedicated team in Guam and on the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 66 years. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Security Title, providing solutions for complex real estate transactions.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Every day of the week, 366 days of the year, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and I'm going to keep saying that every day for 366 days out of every year. It's the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, an extremely important document for all of us, the United States Constitution. I spent a fair amount of time on Tall Tales talking about it, along with things like individual rights, individual freedoms, what a bad deal socialism is, and related political and social subjects. So let's get started right away with the next episode here of Tall Tales, which we start with something called Zemi-Economy. Zemi-Economy. It's my backwards play on words. Translates literally into press the meat, but I reverse it and refer to it as Meet the Press, which is the best Meet the Press program anywhere in the airwaves. It's much better than Chuck Todd's Meet the Press on PMSNBC, because unlike Chuck Todd, I don't pretend to be a neutral arbiter of what's going on here in our world, in our island. I call them as I see them, and if I have to call someone or something out, I do it. So you very seldom leave this program wondering, gosh, I wonder what Bob thinks about that. So we start out with the Daily News, which instead of running local editorials, ordinarily runs editorial boilerplate from USA Today or the Gannett News Service. I'll spend a little time with it today because it's an interesting subject, and I suppose it has some at least tangential local application. And it goes like this. America is in crisis, and it's not just from the Wuhan virus that's plaguing our communities. We are in the midst of an epidemic of hatred that has left most of us feeling hopeless and exhausted. Well, to start out with, when I see people using the word hatred and hate in an attempt to communicate, my guard always goes up, because hate and hatred has become a code word to describe the kind of thought process that used to be the norm in our society. As an example, marriage, that's when one man and one woman solemnize a relationship before a religious or civil official. That's hate speech. What about if Herman wants to marry Henry? That's a marriage? Well, no. You could call it a marriage. You could even find some statutory and judicial authority to call it a marriage. but it really isn't a marriage. Okay, Bob, that's hate speech. You know, so much hatred boiling over here. So whenever I see the word hatred in a script like this, I kind of stand back because I'm pretty sure I know what's coming. But here it goes. We are in the midst of an epidemic of hatred that has left most of us feeling hopeless and exhausted. There are social, cultural, and racial explanations for our predicament, but evidence suggests that a feeling of economic humiliation, which manifests itself as fear and a politics devoid of empathy, is the core of our division. You kind of see where this is going already?
Crystal clear.
Yeah. It was like the other day when I was talking to Real Joe Cruz about his career as a high school basketball player, and when his passes were always being intercepted by someone on the other team and turned into baskets. And I said, remember Real Joe Cruz? The coach used to tell you, Real Joe Cruz, you're telegraphing your passes. Remember that, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. Well, this is Mr. Barry Levins, David Schmick, and he's telegraphing his passes here. The American dream is dying for the average worker, and the middle class is shrinking. At the same time, special interests are increasingly able to rig the economy in their favor, stockpiling wealth like dragons sitting atop piles of gold. That leaves us susceptible to a hate industry that gains influence by stoking hyper-partisan contempt and division. To help Americans understand how we came to this troubling state and how to escape it, David began researching the source of this burning hatred. The result is a documentary called Stars and Strife. Not Stars and Stripes. Stars and Strife. It's available today on demand. Contrary to election year claims, the story about our bitter polarization isn't just about the candidates' personalities and deficiencies. It's about how, for decades, we abandoned, now here's the key phrase, we abandoned Main Street capitalism. Main Street capital, make a note of that. For a system that more closely resembles a kind of corporate socialism that leaves an unsustainable number of Americans behind. Corporate socialism. That doesn't mean a socialist economy where, run by corporations. It means the corporations are benefactors of some created socialism. When we were growing up in working-class neighborhoods in Baltimore, it was possible for a wage-earning parent to provide for a family. The solution to our economic and political malaise is not tossing capitalism aside. It is to rediscover a Main Street capitalism that leverages the best part of our economy to make the American dream possible for average working families. Both of our political parties need to stop the food fight and work to break this cycle of disillusionment that crushes the spirit of so many Americans. Well, I have a feeling I know what Main Street capitalism is about. Of course, they lead you down the path and then they stop before they get to the end of the path. But I suspect Main Street capitalism means to have a lot of wealth redistribution devices built into the governmental tax structure so that we don't have, people with huge amounts of wealth while others don't have enough to get by. So we have to as Barack Obama told, you remember Joe the plumber, you guys? Yeah. Barack Obama told Joe the plumber, we've got to shift some of the wealth. In other words, take it away from these guys and give it to these guys over here. So Daily News runs true to form here. It's not a homegrown editorial, and it doesn't bash Trump directly, but it's pretty far to the left. So congratulations, Daily News. Then we come back to the Post, which seems to have found a groove that it doesn't want to get out of. Here we go. There is no denying that our Wuhan virus spread has turned for the worse in recent days after an initial lull. There were 26 cases in a span of less than 24 hours, as confirmed on Thursday. Over the past few days, prior to the 26 cases, we saw nearly a dozen new Wuhan virus cases almost every day. The governor and lieutenant governor both have fallen ill to Wuhan virus, although they said their sickness is moderate. Governor Lilian Guerrero has assured us she's recovering and has been able to continue working remotely while in isolation at her home. Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio also told us he's doing well and will continue to stay in isolation pending clearance from his health care provider. Oh, this is touching. Here is a quote. We must practice caution. Wear your face mask around those outside of your household. Practice good hygiene. Maintain a social distance of at least 6 feet. Tenorio stated after announcing Wednesday night that he, too, has been affected with the virus that caused Wuhan virus. The best course of action is to act as if you are infected with the virus, Tenorio added. As Wuhan virus infection or exposure has spread, the Guam legislature, the governor's office, the airport, main offices were closed Thursday. Today, the government of Guam is expected to announce that the island will return to pandemic condition of readiness 1. And that's exactly what happened this morning about 11:30. And I got to just stop here for a second, Real Joe Cruz. You know, the governor made an announcement on the radio this morning, and I was listening to it, and I heard her say, condition 1, you can't do this, you can't do that, starting midnight Saturday. You know, my hearing is not quite what it was 40 years ago, but I heard midnight Saturday. And then I saw everything, you know, in various kinds of texts and emails and news releases. I saw everything except 13 o'clock. And I hate to do it, but I know this sounds really pedantic, but I think I'm going to have to go back to this lecture again about how to tell time. Starting out with AM and PM. AM stands for ante-meridian. PM stands for post-meridian. Meridian means that the sun is as nearly straight overhead as it's going to be during that 24-hour day. So up until we had digital devices, we talked in terms of 1 a.m., 2 a.m., etc., 11:59 a.m., 12 m, meaning 12 meridian, 12:01 p.m., so on. But when we got into the digital age, there was no way to do the M. And of course, we couldn't go to a 24-hour clock like the military in Europe does. So instead, we came up with all kinds of things like 12 a.m. meaning noon, or 12 p.m. meaning noon, and a lot of people not knowing whether what 12 a.m. or 12 p.m. really meant. So, you know, when people started talking or writing about what time the restrictions would come into play, some had it starting tonight. Some had it starting tomorrow night. So the easy way to do this is don't use the numbers. If it's about lunchtime, talk about noon. If it's after my bedtime, talk about midnight, and there'll be much less confusion. If you have to use the numbers, then don't round the numbers off. I saw one released, might have been PNC, where the starting time for the restrictions was 12:01 Sunday morning. Pretty easy to deal with. Now, I hope I don't have to go through this again for one reason, because the last time I went through this, Dr. Tom Poole called and said he had thought that 12 p.m. meant noon all of his life. And, you know, when Tom Poole says something, you got to be really careful, because Tom Poole is usually not wrong about anything. But anyhow, tomorrow is not, the restrictions are not in place. Tomorrow night, the restrictions are not in place. If you're still up at midnight, when your watch says it's 1 minute after midnight, the restrictions are then in place. Okay, so I got a couple of callers here who probably want to know what time it is, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I have X. I don't know what to make of that. X.
I'm X.
You
Thank you very much there, Senator, Your Honor.
Yes, sir, X.
I just want to relay some information to the public about government of Guam contract tracing. Okay, I want to tell you this story.
Government of Guam contract facing?
Contact tracing.
Oh, contact tracing. Okay, go ahead, X.
Yeah. Okay, so you know how they're using this contact tracing to find out who's been exposed and to people who have tested positive, right?
Sure.
So, people I know, one of their children, child, son, daughter, whatever, was contacted by public health that he's possibly exposed. Now, he's over 18. He just turned 18 a couple weeks ago. So, you know, they talked to him directly. They didn't violate HIPAA Act or anything like that. But this is what had happened. One of the parents apparently works at a health institution on Guam. The child was identified as possibly being exposed. Now, the boss of the government of Guam employee said, no, you're an essential worker. You need to be at work. The other parent who took the child to get tested just like a couple days ago requested to be tested with the child at, I guess, the public health facility. And public health told him, no, it's only for the patient who was traced. And, you know, they all live in the same house. And he was supposedly exposed since like last week, Thursday or something like that. Now, the government is going to go and P-Court 1 again because of their own negligence. What do you think of that there, Senator?
So it sounds it sounds like what you're telling me is this, that the government has a contact tracing program, and when they find, using the program, when they find someone who has been exposed to another person who has the virus, the next step is to tell the person who was exposed that he can't have a test.
No.
Right?
The person who was exposed got tested.
Okay.
But the people who live in the same house as that person, one is a supposedly essential government employee who works at a government healthcare facility, was told that no, you're an essential person, you need to be at work. Even though that person was tested like 3 weeks ago, maybe, and came out negative. But
he wasn't retested. Is that what you're getting at, X?
Exactly. The child was traced to be exposed only like last Thursday.
Yeah.
The employee was tested 2 weeks prior. Now, the parent who took the child to get tested, when they went to the public health facility, public health informed the parent that the testing is only for the contract traced person.
I see.
And they all live in the same house.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense, does it, X?
And we're going into P-Core 1.
Yeah. Yeah, I see what your point. That was enough to anger you to the point that you wanted to share it with the international radio listening audience, right, X?
Exactly. We need to let the people know because, hey, what's going to happen at 12:01 a.m. Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
Was that correct there, Uncle Bob?
You got it. You got it, X, yeah.
What happens? Everything shuts down again except for takeout and essential services, right?
Yeah, and
but
it's another.
The governor herself got exposed, and she exposed how many people? Even though she knew she was exposed to a positive person, and she still went out into the public, even though she knew. Being a former nurse, that's disgraceful. Being a elected official, and let me reiterate that because I never say leaders. I never say government leaders because just because somebody's elected doesn't mean they are a leader. They are a elected official, and that's all they are to me.
Good point.
And for this kind of thing to happen, the governor, the lieutenant governor is exposed. Why? Why? How can this happen? Why does public health and the other health institution, the government of Guam health institution, their employee is possibly exposed, but yet, no, you're an essential employee. You need to be at work. Well, that person, he or she, should have been told to stay home until you get tested again.
I go along with you.
Your child gets tested and all that, right?
You know, it's really hard to argue with it's hard to argue with someone who seems to be so well informed. X, I agree with everything that you say. And by the way, I think I know your brother. His name is Y.
Y.
Yeah, right.
You got that, Your Honor.
And then you have a cousin named Who, right?
That's a good one, sir.
Yeah, he plays baseball.
Hey, tell the Real Joe Cruz. Hey, where's the Real Joe Cruz? Come on.
Yeah, the Real Joe Cruz is in hibernation here today.
Oh, he's in the bathroom break. Did he get permission from you to use the bathroom there, sir?
He does, but you know, did
he get permission this time, sir?
He did not. He knows he's supposed to, but he's somewhat aggregate, you know.
He is aggregate.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for sharing, X. Thanks for calling.
I just wanted to let the listening public know about some of this crappy policies of the government of Guam.
You did a good job, X. Thanks for calling. Yeah, so that was X. Yeah, and now I have Mrs. Cruz on the line. Good afternoon, Mrs. Cruz.
Hi, good afternoon, Bob. I was listening to the governor's press conference, and I was very much concerned because if we're going back again to Core 1, does that mean, she didn't tell us whether the church is essential or non-essential. And I'm worried about that we're going to be shut down again and not be able to go to church.
I think that's probably what it means. She hasn't addressed that directly, and it wasn't part of the release. Let me check with my expert on church affairs. Jose,
I would
do you know?
appreciate that.
There hasn't been a release yet. The only thing that came from the chancery so far is the schools. But as far as other denominations, I haven't heard anything yet.
Yeah.
However, during P-Core 1, well, it wasn't called P-Core 1. It was just called Shutdown.
Yeah.
The original.
Yeah.
They did shut down
Churches.
all places of worship.
That's right. That's sad, Mrs. Cruz.
That is very sad because I have every right to practice my faith.
We decided that back in 1789 that people have a right to free exercise of their religion. Even there you go. Thank you, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah, even though Commissar DeNorcy didn't like it, it's still in the Constitution. So there's not much I can say about that right now, Mrs. Cruz, but you can bet that I'll be talking about it on Monday.
Oh, great. Okay. Maybe somebody from the governor's office can come out and clarify what is their idea of our religion being essential or non-essential.
Well, I really think that's the church's job to come out and clarify that. And I was not happy at all the way the church conducted itself at the very beginning, where the church seemed to say, well, whatever you want us not to do, we'll do it. I would expect the church to be out there saying, hey, we have a right to free exercise of religion. Tell us what you want to do about social distancing and masks and stuff like that, but don't tell us we can't practice our religion.
Okay, Bob, I appreciate you allowing me to share my concern because that's bothering me again.
Yeah, me too. It's been real nice talking to you, Mrs. Cruz, and we'll see what we can do, okay?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, now have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye. Short break.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy! What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor, I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
On the subject of churches, I have a post here from an ordinarily very knowledgeable person, the one and only Frenchie, who said there will be church this Sunday. So absent contradictory information, well, I always go with Frenchie. You know, if you want to say that Frenchie's wrong, you got a heavy burden. And then I got a note here from, let's see, John Delzell. Victory Chapel is online this Sunday. Okay. So while wrapping up the Daily, as you were the Daily Post editorial, without a doubt, our economy will be further dragged down by the safety measures that must be in place to protect our families, school children, neighbors, and the rest of the island community. We can only hope the spread will be contained. We can work together to curb the spread by taking personal responsibility. You know, the same. They must just do a lot of copying and pasting. I see the same language, whether it's about the quarantine, about opening the schools. They seem to be in a groove here. I suppose I like them too much to say they're in a rut, so I'll say they're in a groove. As long as we help each other and keep safety precautions to a new heightened level, it will be just a matter of time before things get better. Wow, I don't know if I got enough time. You know, 81 years old, I might not be around for any more than another 15, 20 years. And then the Post says, we will do the best we can to shield ourselves and our loved ones from the pandemic. If all of us do our part, we can achieve a much better outcome. No blue star today, Post. Sorry about that. I still go back to the same idea that I've shared a couple of times before. I'm not going to give the governor the benefit of the doubt here. I don't give anybody the benefit of the doubt, because what that means when you say, well, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. What it means is his factual representations didn't square with my idea of reality, but I'm going to let it slide, and I'll go along with his idea anyhow. I'm not going to do that because I see too much and too little, too much contradictory information and too much real persuasion on the part of the governor, other than, well, it's better to be safe than sorry. You know, it's like that old line, if it saves just one life, it's worth it. Okay, so let's go from Zemi Ikotny into the card. And let's see. As far as Janella is no longer part of the card, and Tina now is up to 40 days. It's been 40 days since Tina detected something that is a danger to the health or safety of the people, sufficient to cause Tina to call the legislature into emergency session and waive public hearing requirements on bills. So we should feel really good about that. Tina's kind of got a hair trigger when it comes to the emergency sessions. Okay, so the card for today, I've got the governor versus the business community and 35,000 people out of work. I've got Black Lives Matter versus America, Black Lives Matter versus the IRS, people without cervixes versus the draft.
Wait, that bears repeating.
People without cervixes versus the draft.
I heard it the first time and didn't believe it.
Yeah. Well, you know, CNN had a story. I covered it here on Tall Tales the other day when they were talking about XY folks, people that are born with an XY chromosome and external plumbing. But instead of referring to them as men, CNN referred to them as people without cervixes. This is not...
That's really specific.
Yeah, and you remember that, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah, it was I can't remember what story it was. I'll have to go dig back into it and find it, but that's how CNN... Because, you know, nowadays, man and woman, those words are so 90s, and that we don't think in those terms anymore because everybody isn't binary. So anyhow, it's people without cervixes versus the draft. And then I've got Brown versus Yale and Gary Schiff versus Talina Nelson, if I get that far. So let's start out here with the governor versus businessmen. And the keywords here are mind over matter. I suspect you know what that means, Real Joe Cruz and Jose. Mind over matter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it has a different meaning in this particular context. And this is a story that ran in the Post. Guam will return to pandemic condition 1 beginning at 12 a.m. on Sunday. Here we go, right? When is that? You mean, is that Sunday noon?
Actually, Bob, originally it was 12 a.m. tonight, but we got in contact with the virus and they decided to wait until Sunday.
So the virus decided it would hold off.
Yeah, we got a reprieve.
Yeah, that's good. Well, communications is everything, and I'm glad to know that the communications office, well, maybe the reason that worked, I was going to say, I'm glad to know the communications is still working, even though Janella has moved to public health. But perhaps this was a Janella initiative to work it out with the virus. Very possible. The effective date was initially set for Saturday, but it has been changed to Sunday to allow for more time to prepare. PCOR 1 will be in effect for 2 weeks, the governor announced. This decision was not made lightly. I have implemented this to keep you safe, the governor stated, adding that 65% of recent cases are affecting Guam's youth. Non-essential businesses will be prohibited from operating. All public gatherings will be banned, and beaches and parks will be closed. Only online learning will be allowed for schools. Now, this is going to be a blow to the folks over at the editorial boardroom of the Daily Post because they won't have anything to write about for 2 weeks. Here are some additional details discussed in the press conference. The August 29 primary election will move forward. I mean, it's going to come sooner? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's. I don't think the governor knew herself.
Yeah, because what I heard in the Q&A was that the governor didn't think it was her decision; it was the election commission's decision. But this sentence certainly doesn't make sense. The August 29 primary election will move forward. Move it this way sooner. Grocery stores and convenience stores will remain open. Non-essential retailers will be allowed to continue selling with curbside pickup. Restaurants can sell food through takeout pickup. Home Depot and other hardware stores will remain open. Banks and gas stations, pharmacies, elective surgeries, road closures or traffic checkpoints will not be re-implemented. Darn. I don't know how serious can the governor be. How does she hope to stop that virus without having checkpoints out on the road? And then she goes on to say, we are responding to the crisis, which is even worse than when we started in this pandemic. There have been 90 cases in the past week and 121 new cases in the first half of the month. These, according to the governor, are numbers we haven't seen since the beginning of this pandemic in March. The increase is very alarming and cause for concern. We are not recovering, the governor said. Not everyone is wearing masks, she said. 8 Wuhan virus patients are hospitalized at GMH, with 1 in the ICU and another needing breathing support with a ventilator. So that's the governor. That's the story that ran in the Post. And when I read these stories, I'm always interested in the comments that people post as commenting on that very news story. And there's a really good one on this story from Thomas J. Hertzlet, who said, quote, these, according to the governor, are, quote, numbers we haven't seen since the beginning of this pandemic in March. And then he says, what a statement. Where is the PR person to present the proper picture of what's going on? 2 months prior to mid-March, over 200,000 tourists were allowed without any caution. Mid-March island closing, when then only less than 10 people were checked for Wuhan virus. Mid-March through the end of May, daily total number of people checked less than 50 per day. Now daily, there are up to 100 people checked. Logically, the affected number of people will increase. The more people you test, the more you're going to have positive results. How many people have perished? 5. Not the idiotically and very irresponsibly mass media distributed 6,000. No apologies by our elected administration for spreading incorrect data. Shame on them. No objection and better remedy suggestion by our senators. The amazing thing, where are the business community voices and actions? Yeah, very good point, Tom. And let's see, I got our Carl on the line here. Yeah, the more people you test, the more positives you're going to have. So that's why I said that my skepticality continues to increase as we do this. And the harm that these shutdowns are doing the business community. Okay, I got a short break coming up. After the break, I'm going to finish up on this item on the card, and then I'll go to our Carl.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Wow, nice smile. So perfect and all.
Thanks. I owe it all to Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team. They do wonders for a healthy, happy mouth.
Got teeth? Don't wait until they hurt. Schedule your routine checkup and cleaning with Dr. Yang and his Smile team. Suite 119 in the East West Business Center, Upper Tumon. Call 647-8702 or 3.
The best thing that happened to teeth since toothpaste.
Dr. Yang and his Smile team.
They make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. They are open in Agana, ready for dine-in, takeout, and delivery services from Monday through Saturday, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Call them, 479-2652, and get your Mezcla fix today.
Okay, so here we are back again. So, you know, imagine people trying to survive in the restaurant business and reminding myself and everybody else that we're supposed to be a tourist destination. So restaurants are a very important part of our economy. So with all of this start and stop, open and not open, and restaurants saying, you know, we're not going to just close down here for this next shutdown. We're going to close forever, and we're not coming back. And it seems that the cavalier way that the governor is handling this, without, you know, being really convincing with the numbers, other than saying, well, I want to be really safe here, that's where we get back to mind over matter. The governor doesn't mind, and business people don't matter. That's the takeaway from this whole operation here, I would say. Okay, let's see what our Carl has to say. Oh, one more thing here. I got this picture from a friend. This was at the Subaki. I understand it was at the Subaki, maybe for their grand opening. And look at that collection of people and count the masks that you can see in that picture. I couldn't find a single mask in there. Very, yeah, very interesting approach to the Wuhan virus. Okay, R. Carl. Good afternoon, R. Carl. The most dangerous man in the room. So what dangerous project are you working on now, R. Carl?
Oh, I've ordered some stuff on this virus. I heard a guy that was interviewed on Rush Limbaugh's show, and he's come out with a booklet that he's a former New York Times reporter, but it really sounds very fascinating. He poured through all the data, and anyway, when it comes in, I'll get more into that. But yeah, I'm really frustrated by this situation we find ourselves in. You know, I compare it to chasing our tail. You know, I commented recently about you know, a video I saw comparing the New Zealand approach, cordoning off an island nation of 5 million people, which does significant trade with the world in order to survive and to thrive and to grow, and it's basically shut itself down in order to reach this benchmark, you know, 100 days without any new cases, at a tremendous cost. You know, it's brought a $16.2 billion industry to its knees. It's at least temporarily destroyed the jobs of 229,000 New Zealanders that need tourism in order to survive. And Sweden has taken the exact opposite approach. And you know, in the video, it showed a CDC graph, a chart that graphed the deaths from March all the way through now, you know, early August, and the drop-off of deaths is just dramatic. They're very close to zero right now because they've gotten to herd immunity. They took a completely different approach. And just seeing what we're going through now, it just seems very self-defeating. You know, we're just prolonging the pain. I saw this one chart where there was a poll given asking people how many Americans they thought had the virus. And the answer was 20%. And they were also asked how many people did they believe had died of the virus. And the answer was an average of 9%. In reality, the actual diagnosed cases are about 1%. I think it's a lot more than that. But those are the actual ones who have submitted to tests and have been diagnosed with it. The actual number of people who have died from it, 0.04. The survival rate's about, I think, 99.6 or 99.7. It's way, way up there. You know, so this chasing our tail, it just seems to be extremely self-defeating. And of course, the people setting the policy don't lose any. They haven't lost a single paycheck, so there's no empathy for what the common people are going through with this. You know, shut down, then don't shut down, then shut down, then don't shut down. This is really very self-defeating.
And here's another angle, Carl, that the president has signed an executive order that would provide for $400 per week for the 35,000 people that are unemployed. If we came up with $100 per person, that would cost us $30 or $40 million. And the governor and her minions, oh no, we can't do that. We don't have the money. Well, what about the CARES Act funds that you haven't spent? That's all been earmarked. So if the governor wanted to show us that we're really all in this together, she'd send a note over to the legislature. Hey, well, you guys are working on the budget. Let's get in on this $400 per week unemployment insurance. But the governor has gone to some lengths to make sure that no one in the government, including her administration, loses a nickel out of all of this. Well, everybody who's not working for the government, wage earners and business people have all had their share of really bad times, and the governor just doesn't seem to be interested in that at all.
Very true. Yeah, well, there's another short video I saw from Tony Heller. It's titled "Life Returns to Normal in Sweden." Sweden never locked down. They never mandated wearing masks. They never closed their borders. They never closed down their schools for kids under 16. And they didn't trample on the rights of the Swedes. And life is returning to normal, as evidenced by that CDC chart that shows an early spike, a significant spike, and just an increasing drop-off to the point where now it's quickly approaching zero. And one of the scenes in that video, and this video, Life Returns to Normal in Sweden, shows several minutes of, some minutes of city life in one of the Swedish major cities. People walking down the streets, no masks, no fear, because they've reached herd immunity. They're not, scared of their shadow, terrified of, what's going to happen. And that's how we've always handled, illnesses like the flu. This is the first time we've ever handled a disease like this to quarantine even healthy people. I mean, everybody's penalized for this. It's just really, it's a real head shaker. I'm just really disappointed when I see this kind of stuff. We're terrified of our shadow. Sweden really took the right way, and they're benefiting from it now. That video, Life Returns to Normal in Sweden by Tony Heller, it's pretty brief, but it really illustrates how their approach has, they're now reaping the benefits of that, and we're still terrified of our own shadow, and we probably will be for several more months.
What's going to happen, Carl? We'll have some members of our legislature who, having heard what you said, will find a necessity to take a trip to Sweden to find out how it works. Well, thanks for sharing, Carl.
I wouldn't be surprised, Bob. Thank you for allowing me to chime in.
All right. So, there's a long post here from someone whose name is even harder to pronounce than mine. I'm going to give it a try. Schwefel. Robin Schwefel. And it's a long post, but the impact is, if Lou wants us to all be in this together, she should go over to the Wyndham Garden and do her 14 days quarantine in the Wyndham Garden to see how the Manak Papa live instead of being incarcerated in the luxurious surroundings of Government House. Okay, let's take a break for that big halftime show we've all been waiting for.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Reaction to the Mideast agreement. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Trump calling it a big step toward peace in the Middle East, the agreement between Israel and the United Arab Emirates to normalize diplomatic relations.
By uniting two of America's closest and most capable partners in the region, something which said could not be done, this deal is a significant step towards building a more peaceful, secure, and prosperous Middle East.
As part of the deal, Israel will stop annexing parts of the West Bank. Iran has called the agreement illegitimate and dangerous. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says it's treason, but a senior UAE official says reaction from most capitals around the globe so far has been positive. Presumed Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden says everybody in the country ought to be made to cover their faces.
Biden said if every American wore masks when outside for the next 3 months, 40,000 lives would be spared.
It's not about your rights, it's about your responsibilities as an American.
White House reaction was swift. President Trump said Biden is politicizing the pandemic, calling it an appalling lack of respect to the American people, and he defended his administration's approach of urging people to wear masks while focusing the work of the government on therapeutics and vaccines. But the president also suggested what Biden is asking is draconian big government.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich. Back in June, Biden had said he would issue an executive order to make mask wearing mandatory. After 2 weeks of protecting the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon state troopers announcing they're pulling out upset the county prosecutor has chosen to dismiss charges against scores of people who've been arrested. State police spokesman Captain Timothy Fox saying the troopers are being sent back to counties where prosecution of criminal conduct is still a priority. After a mixed Thursday on Wall Street, Asian stock markets closing Friday higher. Now futures are trading about 75 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, launch! That's just what we did with our new state-of-the-art mobile banking app as we celebrate 66 years of serving our island communities. It's loaded with a ton of new user-friendly features, including remote deposit capture. It's another way of saying you don't have to come to the bank to go to the bank. And if you want to come to the bank, we're happy to see your smiling face as long as you're wearing a mask. And we don't have long lines. Bank Pacific, Rosebud branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Mezcla opened its doors in 2010 and has been proudly serving the people of Guam for 10 amazing years. In celebration of their 10th anniversary, Mezcla will be offering 20% off on all burgers for a limited time only. Terms and conditions apply. Please call them at 646-6295 for more information or visit them at their Upper Tumon location right across Kmart. Thank you, Guam, for making Mezcla one of your favorite hamburger spots.
Some progress reported fighting a big wildfire in Southern California.
Light winds and some scattered thunder showers helping to calm the flames of a massive and fast-moving wildfire, the Lake Fire, torching more than 10,000 acres, about 65 miles north of Los Angeles in just hours. Crews hoping to rein the fire in before temperatures spike again. Officials say so far it's destroyed several homes and threatens thousands of others. In Lake Hughes, California, Jeff Paul, Fox News.
Two big wildfires burning in Colorado have scorched more than 75,000 acres. Some evacuations ordered in Eagle County, Colorado. People are also being chased from their homes in Mosier, Oregon, near the Columbia River by a wildfire. Pacific Gas and Electric promising California state regulators it has learned from its mishandling of deliberate blackouts and won't disrupt nearly as many people's lives this year, as it again expects to rely on deliberate power outages to prevent its outdated grid from starting more wildfires, trying to avoid a repeat of last year's bungled blackouts. A PG&E executive predicts this year's blackouts will affect far fewer customers and won't last so long. A community vigil will be held in Wilson, North Carolina tonight for a 5-year-old boy shot to death last weekend.
Witnesses say Cannon was playing on his bike in front of his dad's house Sunday afternoon when a man walked up, put a gun to his head, and pulled the trigger. Arriving officers and EMS attempted life-saving efforts and took the boy to the hospital, but Cannon could not be saved. The suspect, 25-year-old Darius Sessoms, was arrested Monday and charged with first-degree murder. He lived next door and reportedly may have been angered because Cannon rode his bike on Sessoms' lawn earlier in the day. Cannon's grandmother asked, "When are we going to write Children's Lives Matter on Hollywood Boulevard?" Sessoms, who neighbors say had dinner with Cannon's father the night before the shooting, has a criminal record with firearms and drug convictions.
Fox's Rick Leventhal. And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
$5 foot long, pile high with veggies. They're back. Any foot long is a $5 foot long when you buy one at regular price. At participating locations, Subway, eat fresh.
Hofade, this is Kayla from APL Guam. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated team in Guam and the U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, back at Tall Tales again after that big halftime show that you all have come to admire and love so much. We've got one more hour here, less than an hour in the last half of Tall Tales, the last half before another weekend, which is really, really tough on the real Joe Cruz and I because we like Tall Tales. Fun for us is to come in here and do Tall Tales, and the happiest day of the week for us is Monday. So at 1 minute after 1600 on Monday afternoon is the happiest time for us because we've got a whole week of Tall Tales ahead of us. Now we got to look forward to no Tall Tales on Saturday, no Tall Tales on Saturday, no Tall Tales on Sunday. No Tall Tales all day Monday until 4 o'clock. It's tough, but somehow we'll stumble on through and be back here at 1600 on Monday afternoon. Even if the real Joe Cruz can't make it, I'm sure that Jose will be here. Jose, I suspect that you probably love Tall Tales just as much as the real Joe Cruz.
Yes, sir. I will be here bright and early in the afternoon.
Very good. Very good.
No condition is going to stop me.
No matter what.
No matter what.
All right. Okay, so I've got a phone call here. I guess you opened up the Joe line, right, Jose? I've got a phone call here from another Joe. Hello, another Joe.
Hey there, Bob. I don't know if you can hear me, but my phone, I can barely hear you for some reason.
Really? Now?
Are you able to hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, real Joe. Another Joe. You just can barely hear me?
Just barely hear you. But,
okay, hang on a second. Real Joe Cruz, can you open the front door?
I heard that part.
Go ahead, another Joe.
Okay, well, sorry that same volume, but I thought I'd share that I heard. I don't know the source, or I'm sorry, I don't know if it's being announced in the news, but the Guam Election Commission will be meeting, I think, on Monday to decide whether and how to proceed with the primary election due to the they need over 300, maybe close to 400 election officials at the voting locations, and they might not have enough voting election officials. So the word is that I think the Guam Election Commission board might be having a meeting on Monday. Have you heard this come up?
What is the Guam Election Commission board, another Joe?
I apologize?
Yeah, you said the Guam Election Commission board. What's that?
Oh, is it the people who decide what to do about the elections?
Wouldn't that be the Guam Election Commission?
I apologize.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
misspoke.
Yeah. All right.
So have you heard this? That they're meeting on Monday?
No, I hadn't heard that. I wonder if they would even be permitted to meet on Monday, given that we're in PCOR 1.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So, are you? Will you be broadcasting? Will you be allowed to broadcast Monday? I'll go up.
Try and stop me.
Okay. So yeah. So it's definitely something to keep track of, and I don't know if there's an answer to getting an extra 100 plus, however many number of election officials trained and ready to preside over the election locations. But I just thought I'd share that with you. So if anyone has any new information, please call Uncle Bob, Senator Bob Klitzkie here in Tall Tales, and let us know.
I think I've got a cross connection here. Like I'm hearing something from another line. Let me. Oh, it sounds like Ken Leon Guerrero. And what's he saying? He's saying, "Oh, I told you so. I told you so."
Aye. Yeah. I hope someone has new information, accurate information regarding the Guam Election Commission's possibly meeting Monday, and what they might decide to do regarding continuing the primary election. So, but the word again was that they have a shortage of election officials that are trained to keep track of the voting locations. So, thank you very much for your time, Eric, and
thanks for
listening.
Thanks for the tip, another Joe. Well, that's our international radio listening audience, a veritable fountain of information. Okay, so we'll leave the local scene for a little while, and we'll go to the mainland USA. Next item on the card is Black Lives Matter versus America. And this is something that I picked up from LightSight News. It's called How the Far Left Black Lives Matter Movement Promotes a Revolution That Will Destroy America. A deeper look into the Marxist goals of the leftists rioting around the country. A revolution rages in America. If an image could characterize this revolution, it would be the recent scene of flag burning and Bibles at one of Portland's nightly riots. The burning is a clear provocation meant to offend and outrage. Its goal is to attack those things that still have meaning to countless Americans: God, country, family. The symbolic act communicates an incendiary desire to see these things reduced to ashes. Black Lives Matter movement is the umbrella under which this is happening in America. Its militants circulate in these protests. The Black Lives Matter slogan is painted and chanted everywhere by rioters. Greater New York Black Lives Matter President Hank Newsom threatened to, quote, burn down the system and replace it, should their demands not be met. Most people think the Black Lives Matter movement only deals with those suffering from racism. Many people sentimentally feel sorry for the victims of injustice and sympathize with the widespread outrage. Some may even be unaware of the Portland burning of the Bibles and the American flag. These shallow Black Lives Matter supporters excuse the violence as the excesses of those expressing their righteous anger against a, quote, racist establishment and police brutality. The media spin reporting on the protests support this myth. I wonder if this is a good time for me to mention white coats supporting Black Lives Matter. Remember, we had an epidemic of that right here on the island, where a group of doctors went down to Skinner Plaza and took a knee for over 8 minutes. White coats for Black Lives Matter. These shallow Black Lives Matter supporters excuse the violence as an excesses of those expressing their righteous anger against a racist establishment and police brutality. Very few take the trouble to dig deeper. Where they do this, they would see that Black Lives Matter movement does not correspond to the mental image promoted by the media. Black Lives Matter co-founders Patrisse Cullors and Alicia Garza are avowed and trained Marxists. They make no secret of their program to destroy America as most of us know it. Their radical goals can be found on the Black Lives Matter website and in numerous articles, tweets, and interviews. They extend far beyond the civil rights struggle of old. The Black Lives Matter Manifesto of Beliefs wants to overthrow the present racist society and replace it with an egalitarian socialist society that embraces all oppressed groups and identities. I wonder if that's what the guy meant by Main Street capitalism. Oppressed groups and identities including class, gender identity, sexual orientation, and immigration status. For example, the movement seeks to, quote, disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another. Theirs is a, quote, queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking. Heteronormative thinking. Perhaps its most dangerous belief is its stubborn adherence to class struggle ideology, applying it to their cause. In this case, it reduces all problems to a systemic racism that must be opposed in all social structures and institutions. It creates a false division of society and puts all racial and identity categories at war with the present established order. Thus, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement wants to abolish policing and prisons as instruments of, quote, white supremacist capital heteropatriarchal imperialism. It targets all manifestations of capitalism as tools of oppression and seeks to defer and eventually abolish rent, mortgages, and utility fees. Its religious position resorts to the endlessly recycled liberation theology that applies the gospel to Marxist class struggle narrative. Christ is turned into the redeemer of the oppressed against the oppressive establishment. Its co-founder, Patrisse Cullors, turns old pagan rituals to ancestors and spirits to help in the struggle. Black Lives Matter idea of struggle also targets the traditional and hierarchical church that it sees as a tool of white oppression. Thus, militants and sympathizers like Sean King call the overthrow of, quote, white Jesus representation, saints, and stained glass. All things that traditionally represent God and his moral law must go. With such radical goals, it's hard to imagine why the public would sympathize with the movement, and that's the hard one to understand. Yet more perplexing is the support of the, quote, racist establishment that BLM unequivocally wants to destroy. Sports figures, tech CEOs, and clergymen seem to trip over each other to see who can out-empathize the other in coddling the BLM cause. BLM successfully framed the debate to elicit support of many Americans who are against racism. BLM and the left blame the sufferings of black people on racism. Further, they made racism, quote, systemic, so that only a radical change of the American system will yield results. No individual can do a thing about it except to make amends for participating in the system. Americans are presented with a choice to either support the anti-racist struggle or risk being labeled racists. Like all leftist alternatives, the two options represent a false dilemma. As long as this false dilemma is not denounced and rejected, the BLM cause will continue to advance. So there's more to this article, a lot more, but I think you get the point that in the beginning, a lot of people thought, well, I'm going to support Black Lives Matter because I'm against racism and they're against racism. And this thing that happened to George Floyd was, that was really a bad thing. I spent some time the other day talking about gaslighting. And this Black Lives Matter group has gaslighted the whole country, and it's been very effective and worked quite well because Black Lives Matter has nothing to do with race, everything to do with Marxism, everything to do with destroying the United States as we know it and turning it into a Marxist paradise for all of the right-thinking people. Black Lives Matter is not a good organization, and I keep coming back to, the gullible doctors on this island who just fell right in line, white coats for Black Lives Matter. And I suspect that there may be others who have not found out or haven't been enlightened to the fact that this Black Lives Matter thing is not a good thing. They're not admirable people. Next item on the card is Black Lives Matter versus the IRS. They're just the Black Lives Matter is just a cornucopia of bad things. A co-founder of Black Lives Matter Global Network weighed in on the 2020 election in an apparent violation of IRS laws prohibiting 501c3 organizations from engaging in campaign activity. Patrice Cullors, in her official capacity as a co-founder of the BLM Global Network, told CNN on June 19 that, quote, our goal is to get Trump out. Trump not only needs to be not in office in November, but he should resign now, she insisted. Trump needs to be out of office. He is not fit for office. According to the IRS, a 501c3 organization may not participate in any campaign activity for or against political candidates. The prohibition includes public statements of position made on behalf of the organization in favor of or in opposition to any candidate for public office. Organizations that violate this policy may lose their tax-exempt status. Now, here's something that's really interesting. If you are tempted to donate to Black Lives Matter, here's where your money goes. The donation page for Black Lives Matter is linked with an outfit called Act Blue Charities. Act Blue Charities is the 501c3 wing of the Democrat Political Action Committee, Act Blue, Democrat. The BLM Global Network is not individually registered as a 501c3, but instead operates through a fiscal sponsorship agreement with a nonprofit organization called Thousand Currents. Fiscal sponsorships allow the sponsoring organization to accept and direct donations on behalf of the sponsored group. But an organization sponsored by a 501c3 is still required to comply with the regulations governing nonprofits. Cleta Mitchell, an expert on campaign finance regulation and tax laws governing charitable organizations such as Black Lives Matter, told The Federalist, partisan political activity by a tax-exempt 501c3 group is completely prohibited by federal law. BLM must comply with all the rules. The Thousand Currents, the nonprofit that fiscally sponsors Black Lives Matter, was also exposed for having a convicted terrorist on the board of directors. The Black Lives Matter Global Network and the IRS are not communicating on this. So you said you want to donate money to Black Lives Matter. Your money goes to Act Blue Charities, which is the political action committee for the Democrats. So, once again, the trail always kind of comes back to the same place. Okay, next item on the card here is people without cervixes versus the draft.
I could not wait. I'm so glad you got to this.
Yeah. So you and the real Joe Cruz, being people without cervixes, that is, people that we used to call men once upon a time before CNN showed us the political correct way, are subject to the draft, subject to the selective service laws of the United States. And the way the selective service laws work is that when, I'm going to be a little politically incorrect here, guys, just bear with me for a minute, okay? When a man turns 18, right, a person without a cervix turns 18, he has to register for the draft. And back in the days when I was 18, back in ancient history, you registered for the draft, and you got a draft card in the mail. And then you would be classified, and your classification meant how soon you might be called into the Army, even the Navy and the Marine Corps drafted during Korea and World War II. So that's how a lot of the slots in the military were filled through the draft. But in February 1973, Nixon basically ended the draft. And an amazing thing happened. There were a lot of riots and demonstrations around the country about the Vietnam War. But when Nixon ended the draft, those demonstrations ended just overnight. It was an amazing thing. But anyhow, even today, where no one has been selected to go into the military since February of 1973, the mechanism is still there, and men are still required to register for the draft when they turn 18, and if they don't, they're not going to haul you off to the pokey, but you're not eligible for certain programs, things like that. So in this era of let me come back to this after the seventh inning stretch.
Are you fed up with those long bank lines? Do you wish you had a bank who gave you faster service? Well, by enrolling in Bank Pacific's new mobile app, you don't even need to wait in line. But even if you do want to come down in person, we're more than happy to see your smiling face, as long as you have a mask. Because our service is so good, we don't believe in lines. Because for 66 years, we've been making sure you get the service you deserve. Because where others put branches, we place roots. And we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Woo-wee! Just take a gander at them tender and juicy fall-off-the-bone St. Louis ribs. Heavens to Betsy. What is their secret? It's bursting with so much flavor. I can eat them all day long. Come see for yourself, y'all. These fine slabs of hunky-dory, mouth-watering ribs are only available at Circle K. Circle K. Take it easy.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Horizon Properties, doing real estate since 1978. 14 years here on Guam. Call Maria Miller from Horizon Properties at 777-7792.
Seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field, Chicago. So here we are back at Tall Tales after the seventh inning stretch, and finally got to the item on the card that Jose had been waiting so impatiently for, which I titled "People Without Cervixes versus the Draft."
We identified. I like to identify. It's my.
You like to identify things.
Identify with something. I finally identify with something.
Okay, that's good, Jose. So, you know, back in the days when I had to register for the draft, it was unthinkable that a female, that would be a person who was born with a double X chromosome and a cervix, would be required to register for the draft. I mean, anyone who came along and said, well, you know, if men got to register for the draft, by God, it's only fair that women register for the draft. If you'd have said that down at Ward's Tavern, you'd have been laughed right out of the place. No one would have had any time for you at all. However, times have changed now, and women have come forward. The feminist movement says, well, you know, it's really just a social construct. There's no difference between men and women. Anything that men can do, women can do. So suit was brought on an equal protection basis, saying that it's unconstitutional to insert only people without cervixes, that means men, into the system in the absence of women. So a court just ruled on that here, and I got it from the Hill this afternoon. A federal appeals court ruled Thursday that requiring only men to register for the military draft is constitutional. The unfairness of it. The Supreme Court ruled in 1981 that women could be excluded from registering since combat jobs were closed to them. Combat jobs have since been open to women, but the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans said Thursday it cannot reverse the Supreme Court's precedent. The factual underpinning of let's get out the Law and Order notebooks here, Real Joe Cruz and Jose. Okay, so the Supreme Court ruled in 1981 that there was no equal protection violation in drafting men and not women because women would not be sent into combat. So there were just different. Okay, but the Fifth Circuit said it cannot reverse that Supreme Court precedent. The factual underpinning of the controlling Supreme Court decision has changed, but that does not grant a court of appeals license to disregard or overrule that precedent. The three-judge panel ruled, adding that only the Supreme Court may overrule its precedents. And that's an important point to remember. There's a classic case here of changed circumstances, but a court of appeals can't say, well, that was then, but this is now. Now women can go into combat, so everything's different. It always reminds, that doctrine reminds me of Mr. Justice Robert Jackson, who was asked about the infallibility of the United States Supreme Court. Something along the lines, Justice Jackson, why is the Supreme Court infallible? And Robert Jackson said, we are not final because we are infallible. We are infallible because we're final. That's it. Thursday's ruling overturns a 2019 decision from a lower court that the mail-only draft is unconstitutional. The United States has not instituted a draft since the Vietnam War, and Pentagon officials have repeatedly said they intend to keep the force all volunteer. Now, I got to stop here for a second. And, you know, when Nixon, it was Congress that did it, but you have to give Nixon the credit for it. When Nixon effectively did away with the draft, we went from a citizens' army to a mercenary army in practical effect. And when that happens, there are prices to be paid. Now, I'm not going to rule on anything here. I'm just going to explain some of the considerations. It's much easier for a country to get involved with foreign adventuring if it does not raise its troops through a selective service operation. If all of the troops are mercenaries, that is, paid to be soldiers. A pretty good example of this is how long have we been at war in the Middle East now? And who exactly are we fighting? Can you remember? And exactly why are we fighting? Now, if we were supporting those foreign adventurers with an army made up of draftees, might not be the same way at all. Whether that's good or bad, I'll leave to the individual judgment. There was a lot to be said for the draft because it did have sort of an equalizing effect on the population, especially after it went to a lottery system where a good excuse wouldn't get you out of the draft. It really did, for a short period of time, create that we're all in this together type situation. But that's over. So we don't have the draft anymore. The United States has not instituted a draft since the Vietnam War, and Pentagon officials have repeatedly said they intend to keep the force all volunteer. I think the reason for that is it would really, really be hard to go back to raising an army with selectees. But men aged 18 through 25 still have to register for the selective service system or face consequences such as losing access to federal financial aid for college. A men's rights group, no, whoa, that's pretty bad. Do men have any rights to start with? A men's rights group, these guys must have pretty good imaginations. A men's rights group known as the National Coalition for Men brought the lawsuit against the selective service system, arguing that male-only draft is discriminatory. In a statement Thursday, the organization said it's exploring its options for the next step, including whether to petition the Supreme Court to hear the case. Earlier this year, a congressionally chartered commission recommended expanding the draft registration to include women, saying doing so is a necessary and fair step. Lawmakers, though, did not include the commission's recommendations in this year's defense policy bill. When the House Armed Service Committee considered an amendment that would have added the recommendations, including requiring women to register for the draft, the amendment was withdrawn without a vote because of jurisdictional issues, and lawmakers pledged to hold a hearing on the recommendation. So let's stop and think about that now. the role of women in society has dramatically changed in my short lifetime. And some of that, if not most of it, is because of militant feminism, where women have asserted that they have just as much ability to do things as men do, and that the reason that they'd been shut out of certain kinds of occupation was not because of any physical difference between men and women or even any psychological difference, all social constructions, social constructs. A woman's place is in the home. The man is the breadwinner who goes out and feeds the family, etc. So we've seen a lot of reversals on that, but I just wonder what, if anything, the militant feminists are going to do with this particular issue. Wouldn't it be consistent for militant feminists to come forward and tell Congress, you have to change the law to start making women eligible for the draft, for the selective service system? We're no different from men. You can't exclude us. Now, I have to be, up front here. I was never in favor of this idea of sending women not only into combat, but even into a field environment. If you've ever been in a field environment, you'd have some idea of what I'm talking about. Men and women are not the same. In addition to the obvious differences in plumbing, there are a lot of other differences between men and women. And men make much better soldiers than women do. Society in general has always sheltered women, protected them from things like war and combat for a very pragmatic reason. That reason is that in our species, the women bear the children. So the fewer women you have, the fewer children are going to be born, the lower the odds are that you're going to be able to propagate your own race. A really popular word right now is existential. Protecting women from violence and untimely death is an existential undertaking. Well, I'll bet you $1 that Sam agrees with me, and then I'll bet you another $1 that we're catching drive-through Jack just a little bit before dinner, supper time. So good afternoon, Sam.
Hey, yes, of course I have to agree with you. This is Tall Tales.
It is.
Just to let the public know that the Department of Parks and Rec, DPR or whatever, if you come down to EPOW at this time, you are being stopped by the yellow shirts to let you know that at 6 p.m. tonight, the park is closing.
They're kind of jumping the gun, aren't they, Sam?
Isn't that about 24 hours ahead of schedule?
Yeah, well, I mentioned at the beginning of the program the way the times have been fumbled. A lot of people don't know what time things start.
Well, that's a pretty good point because when I saw the first announcement, I thought it was going to be noon tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone said, no, it's midnight tonight, and then it's midnight tomorrow night, and somebody finally in Adaloop came back and said, well, no, we're going to use Guam tomorrow time at 12:01 a.m. Sunday. So, much confusion, and it doesn't surprise me one bit.
So 12:01 a.m. everywhere except for people carrying the Parks and Rec special watch that has a different time standard than the rest of us use. So when a Parks and Rec employee in another 15 minutes looks at his watch, it says 12:01 a.m. Sunday, right?
According to the nice young lady that I spoke to here at EPOW on the PIC side. Yes, everything will be locked up here in approximately 15 minutes, which in my calculations would be pretty close to 20, not 24, but however long it is before the actual shutdown.
Do you think maybe they're shutting down in sympathy with the real Joe Cruz and I because we won't be able to do Tall Tales tomorrow and Sunday? Could be, huh?
You would think so, but I highly doubt it.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think that much consideration to the point is given. I just don't see it.
Okay, Sam. Well, thanks for thanks for sharing that vital information with our.
I hope Jack has a very good dinner and something happening wonderful in the drive-through.
Yeah, well, it's always one of the high points of the program, the drive-through hour with Jack. So long, Sam.
I will listen in with Tall Tales.
All right. So we'll come to the drive-through right down the home stretch.
You've got a job to do. Having the right equipment for the job is critical, and East West Rental has the exact tools you need. Get it done faster with the right stuff, whether it's landscaping tools, concrete tools, lifts, trucks, lights, generators, trench boxes, welders, tents, tables, and chairs. They're here to help you tackle any project you're working on, big or small. Open Monday to Saturday, 7 to 5, closed Sundays. Find what you're looking for at East West Rental Center in Upper Tumont or call 646-1463.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumont. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific. Banking on the Pacific for 66 years.
So here we are, the home stretch on Tall Tales, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky, and today the Kentucky Derby takes an unusual route through the drive-through at which restaurant, Jack?
How you doing, Bob? I'm still working through the smoked pork, so I'm heading home. The wife made a big batch of potato salad. And I'm going to feast down on some of this smoked pork, which I got from one of my colleagues the other day. And it's delicious. It's just, I'm very grateful, very thankful, very blessed to get it. But I called, and I would like to remind Sam, it quit making sense a while back. But if you look at it this way, maybe it's for the protection of the virus. And if you look at it that way, it makes sense.
It does, yeah.
For us, it's to protect the virus. But I was kind of like I said, I'm saddened that our governor and the lieutenant governor got the virus, but the explanation that followed, I just couldn't make any sense of it. I mean, were they following protocol and still got the virus, which makes the mask and the social distancing useless? Or did they break protocol and get the virus? Then, it make a little sense. But when I was listening, I listened to it twice. It didn't sound that they broke any protocol. It sounded like they were saying that they were wearing masks and they were keeping their social distance, and they still got it.
So I posed the same dichotomy the other day, Jack. If they weren't wearing masks and that's how come they tested positive, then how can they expect us to do it if they're not going to do it themselves? And if they if they were wearing masks and they still came down with it, then the thing doesn't work.
It's a placebo.
Yeah.
That's the best to come up with, is that it's a placebo. And so, yeah, now that's, a while back someone mentioned a false dichotomy. That's what they mean by, that's a dichotomy there. That's not a false one. That's a true one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, I've come to the conclusion, and this is it. The Wuhan virus kills people. Came out of China. Don't know whether yet it's man-made or nature, but it came out of China, and it kills people, gets people sick, and there's serious consequences. Now, this COVID-19 stuff, that's all man-made. Because I can guarantee you no virologist can say that under a microscope they recognize that, yeah, these viruses respect the 6-foot distancing and the hand sanitizing and the rubbing alcohol and the squeezing of lemon juice and the Dakota ring that you got from the what's that, the box of Cracker Jacks. I don't think the virus really respects those things. But I'll tell you what the COVID-19 does. It definitely infected my wallet because ever since the COVID-19, I've been, one, unable to earn or make money decently. Two, I'm buying items and products, not that I deem necessary, but what the government tells me is necessary. And it's not coming in from some funds that the government gives me or anything like that. That's my discretion. It's coming out of my discretionary spending. It's not stuff that like my car payment, my house payment, my bills, my credit cards, my utilities, whatever that I have a monthly obligation to or weekly or whatever that I have an obligation to. This is totally governmented, instituted. Hey, you need to get these PPEs for yourself and your family. And so, yeah, there's a big difference between COVID-19 and the Wuhan virus. And the COVID-19 just doesn't make sense at all. They say 6 feet distancing, and what? The latest study says it could reach up to 16 or 18 feet now. And even now, our governor and lieutenant governor, were they obeying protocol and they still got it, or did they disobey protocol and they got it? It's one of the two. You know, you can't say you obeyed protocol and you still got it, because then that says that whatever we're doing right here, that's like, we are troops out here. You're governor, lieutenant governor. We're the people. We're your troops. And you're sending us into battle with either blanks or no bullets at all, and then say, don't worry, just say bang, bang, bang. The enemy will drop. That's a poor way to set up a defense. It's even a poor way to do an offense against something that's attacking our island. So I'm with Sam. It just doesn't make, Lord forbid somebody has an analog clock down there, because everybody will be staring at it trying to figure where the number 12 is.
What time it is.
So I'm with Sam. I agree with him. I'm just going by what we're going to be a lockdown in what's that, in about 6 hours? I said, oh man, how come some businesses are open? I guess it's just the virus just says, well, we're not going there, but let's go to this funeral or let's go to the church gathering. But all those peaceful protest quotes, we'll keep away from them. Standing in line in the bank, you're safe. So if there's markings on the floor, that'll protect you. I don't get it. I really don't. I don't mean to laugh. It's just that it gets to the point that, you're in the field trying to combat this stuff, and you're getting conflicting orders, or orders that just doesn't make any sense out here when you're out in the real world in this field trying to make, a living and making things go right. But anyways, Bob, it's just getting bad, and I think a lot of it. I think this virus has turned political, and I think the most dangerous virus that you can have is a political virus.
Well, I checked with one of my friends who has a lab, and they said they've done a lot of analysis of the virus, and it's definitely Democrat.
But regardless, political viruses, There really is no cure for it. There really isn't. It's not intelligence. It's not facts.
I said it was Democrat.
Well, it is moving in an unorganized way, so...
I said it was Democrat.
Well, Bob, listen, you have a safe weekend, and I'll see you on the other end.
Okay,
and,
Jack.
I'll see you, Jose. God bless and stay safe.
Jack, the real Joe Cruz and I will stumble through it somehow, Jack. Thanks for calling. Good luck at the drive-through. Yeah, that was drive-through Jack.
You know, Jack's question reminded me of the one about whether protocol was followed or not followed. Reminded me of a scene from Casablanca. But this time the governor is going, I'm shocked that nobody's wearing masks. Excuse me, Governor, your positive test results.
Your winnings, yeah, I remember. That's a good one, Jose. That's a great movie. Okay, so I've got about 4 minutes here. Talk a little bit more about the draft, and I saw an interesting comment here on Facebook. If I can find it, I'll go back to it. Let's see. Richard V. Leone says, that's old-time thinking, Bob. Well, old-time thinking coming from Bob? Does that sound unusual?
It's right on point.
Yeah, yeah. And then he says, that's old-time thinking, Bob. And then he says, gaslighting the Guam public. Well, if I were going to gaslight the Guam public, I would use new-time thinking as opposed to old-time thinking. I'd pull a James W. Moylan, James Woke Moylan, and I would try to show everybody out there how woke I am. So no, I'm not gaslighting. I suspect that what Richard is commenting on is some of the things that I said with respect to women and the draft, women in military service, etc. And my remarks, again, are based on the fact that in the human race, that species of mammal known as Homo sapiens, the female of the species bears the children. Can't do it by herself. She has to have a cooperative man in order to do it. But no matter how many men you have, you won't be able to have children. And I label this as an existential type consideration. And my analysis is that is why that men have always sheltered women. And nowadays in the woke part of the 21st century, women don't like it. Don't shelter us. That's a social construct. We don't need that. Leave us alone. Give us our choice so that we can go out and abort babies. That's more the way we are right now. And so I am old-time thinking with respect to that. We have to protect women because women bear children. And if there aren't children, there will be no more human race. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow, but it's happening around the world, the so-called demographic winter, where so many countries are not producing enough of a new generation to continue. But I'll probably talk about this a little bit on Monday if the real Joe Cruz and I will tough it out. We'll make it somehow. We've always done it before. We'll be back on Monday afternoon. See you then.